Hey everybody, it's Twin Turbo Wen and Justin White of Justin White Tuner, my husband. Hello. We are going to make a educational video for you related to tuning so that you can learn how to set up your scanner, load tune files, and see any issues in your tune while you're remote tuning, or if you're trying to remote tune, or you just want that extra peace of mind when you're looking over your files with your own tuner. So what are you going to show us first?
So basically, what we'll show first is kind of how, once you send a file in, we'll write you a file, you'll load that file back in. I can show you how that's done, as well as once you're logging, how the scanner will be set up, because there's certain things as the channels and the layout. The channels are all of the things that we have to have in order for us to see on our end. The layout is mostly for you to see, but also set up for safeties, alerts, alarms, things that that you can see when you're out making a pull, to just ensure that everything's safe and that everything's going according to how your tuner has set the car. So, all right, so this is your main VCM editor right here. What you'll do once you have gotten your HP tuners, MPVI 2, MPVI 1, either way, most of them have this one now. You'll hook this to the vehicle, turn the ignition on. You'll go open your editor and you'll see this little microchip says read vehicle. So you'll want to click that with the key forward, ensure that your battery's charged, or if it is a little low or something, just go ahead and put a little jump box on it, something to maintain the battery, because if it does go low, it could cause issues. Once you do that, you'll hit read and it will read the tune file out of the vehicle. We're not hooked to a vehicle, so that's not going to work currently. Once you send that in, this isn't how, I'm not sure if this is how every remote tuner does their process, but this is our process. So basically you'll send us that, we'll send you a file back, which will be your base file, along with instructions on how this process is going to go as well. You'll go open that file. So we're just gonna have a stock 13 CTSV file. You'll open it, you'll see a screen like this. So basically you see all this populates here. You'll go to now the green one's gone, you have a red one. You'll click that, and then whether it's right calibration or right entire, we will tell you that, however we need it done. Typically it's calibration. When we're changing operating systems, it's right entire. And then you'll just hit right again, make sure that you have a charger on the car, or the car has proper voltage above 12.5. That's how you load the tune. So next we'll be setting up the scanner. So this is the scanner here. This is the layout that I had set up for typically for most LS vehicles, LSA and some LT. With all the safeties, and set up to where you can drag this down if you're going to the track, and you'll have alarms that'll go off if something's going wrong, and it covers most bases. So what we'll do to set up your channels, you'll open the scanner, you'll go to open channel configuration, and then you'll select what channels you want to run. Again, your tuner will supply these channels. If he doesn't, ensure that you ask, because they do matter. See, we have channels for multiple different things. So CTSVs, LSA, LSX, so that will show you all of these, and this is how many things that we are actually looking at when you're sending us a login. So a lot of people are against the remote tuning, or they're like, man, how can it be the same as in person? Well, the difference is, if you know how to interpret the data that's coming from this, and you know what you need to do to apply it to the vehicle, then even though you're not in the vehicle, it's a lot more accurate, because you're getting somebody that actually understands how all this is working, versus a local guy who may not quite understand as well, but just because he's in the vehicle, you feel like that's a little better option. Honestly, first and foremost, be comfortable with who you're using. If you're not comfortable with them, don't use them. If you are, stick with them. But you'll see as we go here, there's so much data that we can actually see that typically I'll see an issue in here before you'll even know that the issue's there. So this can also save a lot of instances where, you know, you have a misfire and you don't notice you have a misfire, and I see it in here, which again we'll show you here shortly. I can see it and alert you and tell you what cylinder it's at and where it's at to diagnose your vehicle. So now that you have the tune file that you got from your tuner base file, you'll load it in the vehicle. Your next step is to set up your scanner. The scanner is what you'll use to data log the vehicle, as well as relay all of the information back to the tuner. So what you'll do is have your HP tuner, you'll keep that hooked to the vehicle. Make sure that you have your key on. Again, set the channels would be the first thing. You'll receive two files, so you'll have channels and layouts. And the main difference is the channels are what we see and what this will use to graph. And the layout is basically just how you're gonna see it, and the setup to kind of give you some alerts and bells, things that we can put in here to alert you as far as if there's an issue. So to load the channels, that's your first thing. You'll go into this folder over here. You'll go to Open Channel Configuration. Ensure that you get the right ones for your vehicle. There's different ones for different types of vehicles. So GM, Ford, Dodge, all of them. We're going to just do CTSV as an example. LSA, LSX is the channels that I use. So as you see here, there's a pretty immense amount of data that we're going to be asking from the vehicle. So when you set it up and you log the vehicle, all of these channels will be able to see on our end and be able to see what's going on with the vehicle. The next file will be your layout, and then that's just how you're going to view it. This doesn't matter on our end, but it matters on your end. So here's the one that we'll send out. This is one that I've set up with a lot of different bells, whistles, things like that, just to kind of alert you if something's going wrong. And the whole point of this is just, with remote tuning, a lot of people aren't sure, you know, how accurate it is versus a, you know, local in-town tuner. There's nothing against a local in-town tuner, you know, but you're looking at somebody that specializes in your platform. So say the CTSV2, you know, there's a couple of us that really extensively know this platform and can make the transmissions work and everything else work and keep this vehicle safe. Where your local guy, he might work on multiple platforms and not so much specialize in one, but just do multiple. Having them in the vehicle, yes, there are some things that you can and can't feel, but with this amount of channels, and then, you know, typically we have a diagnostic background. Mine was a diag tech for General Motors. We can take this information and I can tell you if there's a misfire or if something's wrong before you'll even feel it. And that's mostly because this is a platform that I highly specialize in. So you have that little advantage on the remote tuner side where you have the disadvantage of them not being in the vehicle. Either way, it's really who you're comfortable with. At the end of the day, if you're comfortable with your tuner, stick with your tuner. If you're not comfortable, you need to figure something out. This will actually also show you what you're looking for and assure that what your tuner is asking for, that the car is achieving it. And if it's not, you need to ask your tuner, hey, you know, I've noticed this issue. Can we address that? Because any of the issues that we will point out here today, if not addressed, they will become a major issue. So that's pretty much it for the scanner. And we'll move into things to look for. All right. So now what I'm going to do, I have a list of log files that I have saved that were issues that we had, be it somebody sent me a log to look at or a customer vehicle that I noticed an issue on. And I just put them together, kind of not so much for the whole tune information, but basically to show you where the issue was, how I found it, or how you can find it, and just kind of give some input on that. First thing we're going to start doing is fuel, knock, things like that. Okay. So to open, we're going to open a log file just as if you had one. We're going to fuel and knock. This one. So right here, what we're looking at, you can see our throttle percentages is up there. So 99.6, the 83.4, or it'll say 84. That is actually wide open. It's just a calculation in the scanner. So this thing's making quite a bit of boost, so more than likely this is a turbo vehicle. What we're looking at here, I'm gonna move this up. This is our fuel pressure, so we're about 70, 72. But as you notice, it starts dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping. As we're getting up there in the RPM, so we're seeing 49. This is something you definitely want to look for. That's a big issue. Right here is how we do air fuel. Air fuel and EQ, basically they're the same thing. The air fuel is what you're used to, 14.7. That's what you'll see on widebands, things like that. They read in something called lambda. To not get too technical, lambda is 14.7 would be 1. This is just a number from that. So if you're 14.67 times 0.833, what you'll do is you'll multiply that out, and then you'll get what your commanded is. I'll show you that right here just so we are on the same page. So if you're just curious what the commanded air fuel would be for your vehicle, you'll do 14.67. That's stoichiometric ratio. You'll multiply it by the commanded, which is 0.833. And you see on this vehicle, they had it commanded at 12.2. So what you'll take from that is you have your commanded, your actual, this is what your wideband is outputting to the HP tuner, and then you have your percentage of error. So what you want on this is more critical than most things, is whatever this number is, this number should be. So where on this one you see we're commanding 0.833, looks like they kept that the whole way through. But see right here, we're seeing 0.72, 0.72, 0.70, I mean as low as getting into the 0.69s. If you want to calculate that out, you can do the same thing just to see what it's actually achieving, which I'll do again here on the screen. So 14.67 times the 0.70. So this vehicle is actually running at 10.2, and remember earlier we calculated that they're looking for 12.2. If you see this on your vehicle, this would be something that you would alert the tuner and say, you know, I see what you're commanding, but I'm way off from that. What do we need to do to address this problem? Then whatever you guys work out from there. But basically with it running that rich, you see this dropping off. At a certain point, this is gonna come up and go lean. Closer to 1 would be leaner. Instead of having to math all of that out, the way that I set this scanner up is it calculates it right here. So once you have this set up, you can scroll across it and then watch the air fuel ratio here. So basically this thing's running mid-low 10s, even though they're commanding a 12.2. Possibly why that fuel's dropping like that. So that's just one way to see an issue. Go to another file here. So this will be knock retard. So this is it's like a vehicle at the drag strip. So this is more where our alerts would come in. So the way that I have this set up, this is your fuel pressure. So anywhere from, obviously we want a little over 50, but I put 50 as my low point. 50 to 90, we're gonna be okay. If you start getting under 50, we're gonna illuminate this. This is an EQ error gauge. So where I explained what this was, how it's your actual versus your commanded, your error percentage. If it's positive or negative 10, more than 10% positive or more than 10% negative, this will light up red. I make it really big because clearly that's a very critical one. Any degrees of knock is something of concern. So this will light up if it knocks. This is if it overheats, coolant temperature. Again, this is just a calculated version of the EQ, just for, you know, typically nobody wants to sit here and calculate this out, but the computer loves that. Again, oil pressure. So this car, it looks like they took off, and if you notice, this thing is clearly lean. This red here is the actual, this green is commanded. So it commanded it to add the fuel, and the fuel wasn't there fast enough. Once it kind of settled out, you'll see it starts lining up line over line. But right here you see a little bit of knock retard. See, we're illuminated here. This is likely from that lean tip in when the car takes off. Again, this is one of those issues where if not addressed, it will become a problem. So you can also see as it took off, this is your mile an hour, how it kind of curves over, and then you see the timing dipping. This is a sign that the car's about to miss a shift. So it went to shift, but with the slipping wheel speed, the transmission kind of got confused here, and instead of being able to take that shift, it tried, it couldn't make it, it pulled timing again. This is just something else to look for. As you kind of go through, you see everything's in check. We got a little lean again here, kind of brought it back in, and then here's another shift here, and then we went lean once more. It looks like we got a little more knock. If your knock retard comes out right here, so it hit 4 degrees, it should taper down in this manner. The reason for that is if it pulls 4 degrees of advance out of the vehicle, if it just jams that 4 degrees back in, it's gonna knock again. So the way that it should be set up is that it slowly adds that advance back. If it detects knock again, which it did, it will slowly drop it back off again. This is how it should be functioning. This is how it keeps everything in check. If you look at the shifts, we have, as it goes through the shift, the timing right here, it dips. It's kind of making a little bit of a U. If you can kind of see, it comes down. The timing goes to -1, and then it comes back up. Gives us a shift time of 175. Anything under 250 is not bad. Anything over 250 is absolutely not acceptable. See, it dips again. What this is torque management. Very controversial deal here, but the torque management, basically what it's doing, you can look at the torque value here, and this is never really accurate, but it needs to be somewhere in the ballpark. Usually 15-20% higher than what the car's actually producing at the crank. But if you notice, watch the torque number. As we're coming up, the torque drops. That's because it pulled the timing out. So what it's doing is it's pulling power, allows the shift to happen, and then puts the power back in. For any vehicle that's daily driven, that's very beneficial. That's something that you want to look for. If you notice the timing was out for a little longer here, that resulted in a 200 millisecond shift, which shows us that this shift would be something that you'd want to tighten up. You wouldn't want to let it just keep getting worse, because it will eventually start to burn the clutches a little. Other than that, the air fuel tip in, this would be an issue. You see how this line lays over this line? You're basically looking for the red and the green to be identical. Obviously, whatever layout you're using would be different, but you want these to match 100%. Outside of that, looking for your knock. This would be something that, 4 degrees is not good, but it's not, typically if the sensors are set properly, it's not actually knocking, but it's about to knock. And if they're sensitive enough, they'll catch it before it becomes an actual issue and hurts the vehicle. So it's something to bring up to your tuner. We notice the fuel pressure stays pretty steady on this one. We don't really have much of an issue. You'll always have a little bit of a taper, but nothing crazy. We'll move on to a different concern. All right, so now what we're going to move on to is more of some of the things that, again, a tuner that understands the data a lot more will be able to see that you may not even feel. This is a situation where the car feels great, everything feels good, but nobody really noticed that there was actually a misfire, which I caught. We were able to fix it, and everything was good from there. So let me pull that log up now. So right here. So what we're looking at, O2, what this is the O2 sensors, oxygen sensors, where a wideband is an oxygen sensor. It reads a much wider area, typically around 8 or 9 AFR, all the way to about 20 AFR. What these are, they're called narrow bands. So they read in millivolts, 450 being about their midpoint, 0 being really lean, 1000 being really rich. Their range is more to plus or minus about 20% from 14.7. So all they're trying to do is they try to trim the fuel to get 14.7, which is your stoic ratio. And how they do that, they pulse up and down, as you can see in this right here. They're pulsing up and down, and what that's doing is that's adding and trimming the fuel to keep everything at stoic. So if you get bad fuel or you get different fuel, these are what keep the car perfect. So what happened on this run, typically if you know what you're looking for, you can tell on the boosted cars where the air fuel is based on these numbers. So again, that's a controversial thing, so either way, what we notice here and the issue is this one is much lower. And if you see, we have a straight line. Typically that's what you're going to have when you're making a wide open pull, but you notice this one's tapering. That's how we know that there's an issue. So if you see that your O2s aren't matching, now it may not always be a misfire, it could just be that O2 sensor is failing, or you know, the wire's touching the exhaust. It could be many things. The point is, these should always match. If they're not matching, then something is wrong, and it's whether it's mechanical or something in the tuning or whatever it is, this needs to be addressed 100%. Something else that we see in this log is, as you can see, the boost coming in right here. Watch our injector duty cycle. So we got 111% duty cycle. That basically, that's the duty cycle that the injectors are pulsing. And what mostly caused that was, you know, low fuel pressure, and then the boost coming in requiring a lot more fuel. And you notice the red over the green, so you know the air fuel is pretty on point here. We got a little bit some lean right here, which you know gets addressed later. But you notice we should actually start running out of injector. Once you get above, they say 80%, you know, anywhere from 80 to 100 is dangerous. When you're starting to get over 100, you run the risk of locking an injector open, hydrolocking the motor, which can lift the heads off. There's a slew of issues that come with this being this high. Another way to see if for some reason you don't have duty cycle is the injector milliseconds. Typically, once you get over, see, about 20-21 milliseconds, you're pulsing that injector so much that it's literally just staying open. It's flowing everything it can flow. This one actually controlled pretty decent. They are good injectors. So even though it went 110, 111, we still kept our EQ on target, or our air fuel ratio on target. But this is something to look for. Look for injector duty. Look for your misfires or your O2s to just not match. Again, all of our alerts, if you see up here, we've got alerts that the car's going lean. Basically, they shift, go again, and see another little spike, 102. When you see things like this is a sign. Let's make sure that we get this addressed. Okay, so something that I didn't go over, that I meant to go over on this drag race log, we're gonna go now. Supercharged vehicles, turbocharged vehicles, they have two intake temp sensors. There's one that's usually in the mass air meter, and then there's one that's going to be in the blower or the intake manifold. Whether your air fuel's right or your timing's right is critical, but if your intake temperatures are way high, it'll still cause issues. It'll cause knock, it'll cause detonation, it'll cause a lot of other trouble. So the way that I have this set up, and it's again something you should definitely watch if you're going to the track, or even on the street. You know, sometimes your pump can fail, and you'll have this to let you know that something's wrong. So basically, this is the car pulling up. Looks like he's sitting at the line. So here's our inlet air temp, which means this is our in the mass air meter on this vehicle. Supercharger intake air temp. This is a this is in the blower, like in the lid. Turbo cars, they may put this in the manifold. Right here, manifold air temp. Some vehicles utilize this for timing reduction. This specific one doesn't. Manifold air temp is inlet versus supercharger versus ambient, and it makes a calculation to give you manifold air temp. So what you're going to be looking for is your supercharger intake air temp. Inside the lid of the blower on this vehicle, it's 95 degrees. You'll notice as he starts to make a pass, we have it scaled down here in the red. So when he starts, we're 95. When he starts going, you'll see it starts getting up there pretty quick. So it's climbing, it's climbing, it's climbing. Right here, once we get over 145, that's where I consider it to start getting hot. I'm not going to say that's like trouble area, but the closer you get to 200, anything 180 to 200 is shut the car down. It's just too much. So as this goes up, you'll notice we illuminated right here over 145, and then this car got to about 154. Again, not abnormal. A lot of cars will do this if they don't have proper cooling mods, but this is a good way for you to identify the problem. This will work on supercharged or turbocharged vehicles. NA cars, they don't really have this issue. They wouldn't have this sensor to begin with. They'll have this one. You can see the air started at 127 on this vehicle to begin with, just coming in. So you kind of get what you get there. But something that we'll notice is that even though we went a little bit lean, it looks like here, the main issue with this knock here is more likely caused by the intake temp, sorry, wrong one, the intake temp going up than it is by this 3% of error. I think that pretty much covers all of your main things. Just to go over it one more quick time, you're going to want to watch your EQ error, so your commanded versus your actual. This is what whoever's doing your tuning, this is what he's asking it to be. This is how good the vehicle is achieving what is being asked. Fuel pressure and injector duty, you never want your injector duty over 80. Fuel pressure, you want it, whatever number they have it set at, it needs to maintain within 10 or 15 psi. If you're like 20-25 psi drops, you've got much bigger issues. And like I said, you can watch that here. So we're going from 73 to about 67, 5-6 psi drop, not a big deal. Maintains decently, needs a little bit of fuel here. Another thing that I'll touch on briefly, the way that all of the spark is calculated and set up in the vehicle is something called grams per cylinder. The best way to explain what that is imagine if you've ever heard volumetric efficiency. A naturally aspirated motor will never achieve 100% volumetric efficiency. There's always something that's going to cause it to not. If you got something like 440 cubic inches, 14-to-1 compression, you might see a little bit of actual positive pressure in the intake charge if that motor is that efficient. But these being 9-to-1, if you didn't have that blower on there, you would never see 100. You'd see more like in the 70s or 80s. So even though this is 1.8, this is actually, if you think about it in your head, this is 184% efficiency because it is supercharged. It has 15 pounds of boost, so it is 184% efficient. That may not be the technical way, but that is the best way to think of it. When you come back down to idle areas, you'll notice we're like 30% efficient, right? Because the throttle body's shut. It's not pulling a lot of air in. So it's hard for that motor to actually be volumetrically efficient in that area. The reason I point this out is as you get on the throttle, you'll notice that volumetric efficiency shoots up as that boost comes in. If you've got a vehicle that, you know, is pushing a decent bit of boost and this number is under 1.0, clearly there's a problem. Where the problem lies, that's for you and your tuner to figure out. But just know that that is a problem, because the other thing this does is it calculates your torque signal. If your torque signal, in the case of this being a 6-speed automatic or a 4-speed automatic, they're all what's called torque based. So if your torque that the car's making isn't reporting realistically, it doesn't matter how much pressure you tell the transmission that you want. You can tell it you want 500 psi, but if it sees 200 foot-pounds, it knows that it doesn't need 500 psi. So it's going to drop that pressure and keep dropping it until the transmission slips or gets hurt. That goes for 4 speeds, 6 speeds, 8 speeds, and 10 speeds. An example of that, I have a file. Go back. Right here. An example of that would be, say, this vehicle here. You can see we're 19.6 pounds of boost, wide open throttle. Clearly this thing's making some power. Clearly has way too much timing in it. I'm not really sure the setup on this one, but the 19 pounds of boost, you would expect that to be almost 2.0 efficiency. See, we're seeing 0.62. And remember, at idle, we were only 33%. This at idle is saying that it's 0.02%. So it's saying it's 2% efficient. Well, here, sorry, idle. 0.1, 0.2, or 0.1. Clearly, here's a problem, right? So this is saying at 4,000 RPM, we got the throttle shut, but at 4,000 RPM, we're making negative 118 foot-pounds. You can obviously see where the problem's at. We're cruising in this vehicle. You can see it's what, 33% throttle. We're making negative 43. Vehicle clearly wouldn't move if it was making negative 43 and only 10% efficient. So if you see something like this and you see the boost coming in, or even at idle, if you think that your motor's 10% efficient, either you really hurt something, like catastrophically, or they got something scaled wrong. Either way, if you have a transmission that is torque based, which most of you guys do, you better have this right, because if not, you'll be putting transmissions in this thing left and right and sitting there wondering why. The other thing, let's see. The other thing here we can see is they're commanding 0.833 and we're getting 0.59. That is 8.6 air fuel. So clearly that missed the target by 30%. If you added that 30% of fuel, this number would come up a little, but nowhere near the range we need it to be. So if you're looking at your log and you're trying to determine things and you see something like this, call the tuner quickly, because something's not right. Other than that, I think that pretty much wraps up the Gen 4 cars. Let's see, we'll go to a shift here. I think we're at 6 minutes. So this vehicle here, where I touched on a little bit earlier about when it shifts, it pulls the timing down. It's completely normal for it to reduce some timing when it goes to make a shift. Again, it's pulling power, making the shift, put the power back in. Most of the time, if everything's scaled right, you won't feel the nose down or anything like that. If you do feel like you're feeling kind of a nose down situation when it goes to shift, or you notice that the RPM goes up, like as in a flare, then this is where you're going to want to look. Unless they have torque management disabled, which we don't recommend for street cars, but everybody does their own thing. If you look at the timing, we're about 20% throttle. Our torque signal looks normal, but see our spark drops. Now, it's not an issue that it dropped low. It can drop into the negatives. It doesn't matter. Where the problem comes in is how it drops, and you see how it's jagged here. That's because it knows that it's missing the shift, and you can see where the car nosed down a little bit right here. So it was missing that 4 to 5 shift. And then the 5 to 6 shift, you can see it pulled all the way into the negative 18 range and held it. The reason it held it is, again, it knows, the transmissions are smart. It knows that that shift wasn't going to happen if there was any power in the engine. So it dropping that low is not such a problem. The fact that it drops that low and it holds and then it puts the timing back in means that it knew that that next clutch wasn't coming and it needed to do something to the engine to allow that to work. Again, another spot here. You can see it only went down to 3, but look at how long it went down to 3. So what you can see, just this right here, this is bad. This is really bad here. This is getting a little better. This isn't foolproof, right? But this is going to give you a pretty good idea that if you've got a weird shift, you see some things like that, you know, hey, this needs to be addressed. You see how we got more of a V formation here? This is a normal shift. A little V formation where it drops down. Again, look, it's going all the way down to 3, but it's doing it so quickly, it's still a shift, achieving a 75 millisecond shift, which is pretty quick. Typically, this is more pronounced on a car that has a loose stall converter or something like that because it doesn't have as much load on the transmission. So that kind of covers that. Let's see. So here's one that we have. This is one that we had, it looks like it had a fuel issue, fuel pressure. A lot of people, you know, they talk about the 4 fuel system, how it has a lot of issues with the fuel slosh. We've put the Holley hydromats on it. It seems to have helped. It does pretty good. This is a situation that it didn't have hydromats. So what you'll see is as the boost is coming in, if you watch and remember what we were looking at, the fuel pressure here, see how it drops? It went from 82 all the way to 43. So if you're going through your log with your tuner and you see that, you know, this red isn't perfectly over the green, but it's kind of there, and then you start seeing it getting a little here, and then you see that spike. So that spike was it going rich, or lean, sorry. That spike was it going lean. And the reason it did that is because the fuel pressure literally just tanked. And the car couldn't compensate for that. So if you think that you're having that issue, this is how you can check it. You can pull your log up, you can look at it versus on this scanner setup, and it's plain as day. This is what happened. It lost fuel pressure. Once it shifted, as you can see, here's the timing reduction. It's a tight little V. Sorry. So it achieved a 75 millisecond shift, and this car, this must be Wendy's car, because it's maxed out the map sensor, so it's clearly over 22 pounds of boost. And then you see, even at the 20-something pounds of boost, it saw this issue. It popped a little timing out of it, boop, and it made the shift to 75 milliseconds. But right here, obviously, it's pretty far off. Look, we're 9-something air fuel. So we got our fuel pressure back because now the fuel isn't sloshing and this air fuel is way off. I blame Wendy. I'm not sure what happened here. Oh, here we go.
That's me. That's 2010.
It's not you?
I got 09.
Oh, okay, good. It's not Wendy. Man, somebody else is out there cooking. Anyways, here's another one. It dips again. So 70. It's holding pretty steady, and then we got a little signal dip, but you couldn't really tell, and then boom, it tanks off. Here we go. You see it goes lean. There's something else you'll notice here though, is making 20-something pounds of boost. This torque signal, pretty low, but I would think it'd be low, but now that I'm looking at it at 9-something air fuel, that's probably pretty accurate. But our grams per cylinder, remember what we talked about. 1.0 is 100% efficiency. This thing at 22 plus pounds of boost, if you think about it, if you're 0.8 efficient just NA, every atmosphere, which is 14.7 psi, every atmosphere would double your efficiency. So at 14 pounds of boost, you should see about 1.8. Not great at math, but 14.7 again, 28-ish pounds of boost, you should see another 80 kPa on top of that, or another 80 cylinder. So we're seeing 292. Obviously this thing is really cooking. This thing's making some power. Notice that our narrows are 920, 929, 929. They're laying over each other, so we don't have misfire issues here. You see the dip here? That's where we went lean. So even though it can't read air fuel ratios that high, or sorry, even though it can't read air fuel ratios as accurate as a wideband, remember that stoichiometric is 14.7 and 450 is the reading that you would typically get there. So as this flashed that lean spot, it started going down to read the 450 range. So if you don't have a wideband and something acts weird, and say your wideband wasn't logging, and you see that happen, you know it went lean, you need to get out of it. Or you know it went lean, you need to have that issue addressed. Same thing here. So within this log, you can pretty much cover all of that. This has definitely got to be a turbo car. And you'll notice the supercharger intake air temp would be manifold on this one. So it's coming in at about 118, and then we got about 109. So this is probably spraying methanol after the intercooler, and that's how it's picking up this variance here. But all in all, everything else was kind of there. This fueling on this, you would adjust that fueling, and then figure out why you're having these lean dips. All of that is pretty much easily said here, because everything starts lighting up. When that dip happened, we got our fuel pressure lighting up, we got our AFR lighting up. We know, hey, something's wrong. I'd probably adjust this a little bit if your shift points are that high. This car shifts, looks like around 7,000. I'd probably adjust to turn the red off here, and that way if you're using this at the track, you would obviously, during that pull, you'd see red over here, you'd see that red come up over here, and you'd know to abort the pass. There's a lot of things that we can do with this software that all tuners can do with this software, and it's really vital. The more you log, the more you scan, don't rush a tuner. If they do it in 5 revisions, honestly, chances are if they're able to dial in a car that's heads cam, all that within 5 revisions, that car's not dead on. It's not that it can't do it. I've had instances where I've had cars 2 or 3 revisions and they're great. But as these things get more complex, don't be afraid of 10 revisions, 15 revisions. The whole point of that is the more you log, the more you go to the track, the more you familiarize yourself with this, the more successful you will be with your car. I've got guys going on 4 years, with the same setup, same stock motor, same stock trans. They log every time they go out, and every time they go out, we go a little faster and a little faster, because every vehicle's a little different, every setup's a little different, and every car's going to want something different. But as long as you learn these basics and have them set your scanner up like this to kind of aid you in learning, that's the key to success right there. Knowing what's going on with your car is hands down the smartest thing you can do. And if customers of mine, if they are looking at their log and they see problems, let me know, because I'll immediately get on that problem and we're going to solve it. I will include this channels and layout in the description on the video. And then we'll probably forward the video to Facebook and I'll put it in there. If you don't see it there for some reason, PM me or email me at justinwhitetuned@gmail.com. and I'll send you the channels and layouts. If you just want to, if you're tuned by somebody else, not a problem. I'll send it over to you anyways, and you can use it with them. I don't have an issue with that. This is pretty much just to better the whole community as a whole. And I think this will be extremely beneficial to a lot of people. So next we're going to go on to Gen 5.
What?
Are we going?
Yeah.
Okay. So, so we've done the scanner. I've told you grams per cylinder to kind of give you an idea. It's just, you don't have to understand it. It's just a reference that you need to know, because again, if these are off and they just aren't realistic, if you've got a car on 20 pounds of boost that isn't at least 100% efficient, it's either broken or the tune's wrong. Either way, address it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pull a tune file up. This is a 2013 stock CTSV tune. And I know people are like, oh, but it's a stock timing table. Well, remember that GM did spend millions of dollars on R&D, so chances are this is kind of accurate.
By people, he means me, because I just said that.
What?
No, it's a stock table, though.
Right. So what you're looking at here, remember our idle area, we're somewhere around this range. Here's your RPM, here's your spark. This is grams per cylinder. So in your idle area, we got decent little bit of timing. And the more timing, remember, the more efficient the motor is, the less timing it needs. Because, well, frankly, that's just how it works. If the motor's not efficient in that area, it needs more timing to make it efficient. So basically, it needs to spark earlier to be efficient. So as you go up in grams per cylinder or volumetric efficiency, the timing needs to come down. If you come in here and it goes to 1.0, and so what's this, 100%? So we're cresting boost here. If you see, stupid computer, I blame the computer. If you see that, chances are your boost here is not the same as your boost here, nor is it the same here. So this would be wrong. Really no other way to put that. I understand some tuners tune like this, and controversial or not, it's lazy. This needs to be scaled by efficiency. A lot of times what you'll notice is you're sitting around here at idle, and when you go to get on it, it'll drop here and it'll come down. Let me undo the laziness. It'll come down here. See, as our RPM goes up, our efficiency is coming up, boost comes in, and you'll settle around in this area. And then when you get up top, the blower's starting to slack off a little bit, right? So it's not as efficient, and you'll notice the timing's coming back down a little bit. There's modifiers for that. Again, we're not trying to teach you how to tune, so we'll deal with that another time. My point being, all of this, all of your grams per cylinder has to be accurate in that log, or at least close to realistic in that log, or this timing table doesn't work. So again, on that car that you saw, that was 0.01. So basically, anytime it's idling or driving, it's got between 38 and 48 degrees of timing in it, where it should be between about 13 and 36. Clearly that's an issue, right? And then at wide open, we saw, I think, 60 something. So where it should have been clearly down here, 20 pounds of boost, we should have been in this area, 18, 19. It was up here. So our problem being, again, this isn't the timing table from that one, but bear with me 1 second here. This isn't the timing table from that one. I honestly don't even know where the timing table is for this one, but you'll get what I'm saying. See, our spark is 34, our grams per cylinder is 40. So as we start getting into boost, we're like 18 pounds of boost here. We should be well over that, but we're not. So look what happens to our timing. Our timing is staying pretty high. I mean, you may agree that 18 pounds of boost at 24 degrees is okay, and that's totally fine for you. But realistically, whoever tuned this vehicle likely didn't intend this. And if they did, that's on them. But now that you see the issue, right? So if we're going from 0.1 to 0.7 at the 0.7 at the most, here we go, 0.1 to 0.79. That means instead of using this entire timing table, we are using that much of it, leaving all of this, I don't know, for 30 pounds boost or 40 pounds, but whatever, however they scaled this thing. So just keep that in mind, right? And then typically, if that is the problem, what you're going to see is you're going to see one of these numbers. That's because there's a problem and they don't know how to fix it. Be aware. Anybody that wants to argue that, feel free to PM me. I'm cool with learning if this is something that I just didn't know or some super secret. Moving on. We're going to go to Gen 5. Typically, all of the things that you saw, the EQ ratio, the fuel pressure, all of the things that we touched on, temperatures, those are all still relevant. But where you had the intake air temp 1, which was the inlet, and then the supercharger temp, Gen 5 doesn't use that. Gen 5 uses manifold air temp. So even if the blower's cool, it's always saying it's hot. Not very cool, but thank you, GM. So we're going to touch on a few key issues. Let's go with, first one is throttle. These vehicles are totally different. They're inertia based, which is 100% torque relevant. So what I mean by that is you tell this thing, hey, I need to make this much power, and it decides to make that much power. So if I say when I'm wide open, I'm making 600 foot-pounds, it's going to do what it thinks it needs to do to make that 600 foot-pounds. The reason I'm telling you this is because if you see this, this is a wide open 99% throttle. Well, it did 44 degrees of timing. It still did timing, and that's because our grams per cylinder is 0.38. Why is our grams per cylinder 0.38 at wide open? Because it actually only opened the throttle by 36%. The reason it did this was because, I don't know how much of this I really want to put out here, but what it did was whatever torque that you told it in the tuning that it should be making, it thinks it's making way more. So what you've got to do is you've got to tell your tuner, and he needs to fix it. Let's go with that.
Good idea.
So essentially, on all your Gen 5 stuff, when you're making your runs, be conscious of this. If you see your accelerator pedal's 100% and your throttle's only 35, the car may feel like it's making up some power. It probably won't, but sometimes you'll see like 60% and 99. Just remember that that's left on the table. That's a lot of power left on the table. If you're cool with that, this is probably not the sport for you. But either way, you kind of get the gist of that. The other thing on Gen 5 is the way the fuel system's set up. There's a low side and a high side, and this is where GM just rapes us. The low side is just a pump in the tank that pumps up to a pump on the engine. The engine has a camshaft driven pump that's called your high side pump. The pressure difference would be 0 to 70 or 80-ish on the low side. On the high side, we're looking for numbers up to 3,000. Some people go higher than that. If they do, that's their thing. Just be conscious of what you're looking for is a minimum of 2,900 is what GM calls for. I'd say 2,500 at least or above when you're wide open. As you're driving, it's obviously going to scale. It's going to go up. It's going to go down. It's going to do different things. So what you're going to look for here, actually, we're going to go to a different log that shows this a little better. So what we got here, we have our fuel pressure. Now this is just our regular low side fuel pump. If you see, we're about 46. When you go wide open, it comes up to 80. That's low flow versus high flow. Once it's in high flow, it maintains its fuel pressure. If this is dropping, yes, this will affect the high side. So you always want to maintain your low side. Most of these cars, you can do E85 and a tune and pick up a 100 wheel and you're good. Try to do a pulley, you're gonna have to do a low side fuel system. That's just how it is. That's how GM intended it to run. So be cautious of that. once you fix this issue, all of this is dictated in the tuning. I'd say up to about 850 wheel, if you have a camshaft and you have a low side pump, and you've shimmed it properly, 850 wheel, again, people have different takes on this, you can maintain 2900 without an issue on stock injectors and a stock high side pump. That's no methanol and that's on ethanol. So example here, this was holding good low side, but if you notice, the high side came only up to 1500 and then it dropped, and you see we're in the 600 range, and then it comes up a little bit and then it dips and then it comes back up. This is a big problem.
Sorry, I'm having trouble with the connection. Please try again in a moment.
Okay. Anyways, so basically, if you've got this, watch that high side. If that high side's dipping, even if at this point you're going to feel something not right, but if it's dipping to 2000 or 1800, you may not feel a miss or you may not feel any issue. But contact your tuner, because that's a problem. If you know they're having issues, if the car only makes 700 horsepower and this is not holding and it's got a cam, your tuner needs to figure that out. But again, this is very critical. Gen 5 is keeping the throttle open. As you noticed, again, 84 is wide open, thanks to HP Tuners. But you see it stays open, the throttle, but you see that high side dropping off. Make sure that high side stays up. The low side stays up, the high side stays up. That pretty much covers what I was trying to get here. Something else you want to look for, Gen 5, this would be pretty much the last thing. At idle, again, they're torque based, so you tell it, you know, I'm making this much power at idle, so it needs to compensate for that with timing, airflow, however it wants to do it. Whatever strategy it uses, based on how it's set up, the timing should be in the positives. So where you can see this thing's 15 to 30, 15, 20, 30, kind of moving around, not a problem. That's about how it should be. It seems whatever this car is idling pretty high. But either way, the spark is there. So you want to make sure of that. A lot of the Gen 5 cars, you'll see they'll do a cam, and if somebody's not used to the Gen 5 platform, they'll have it idling, and then you'll have negative timing like this, which, you know, may not seem like a huge problem until you pop your hood and you can see through your headers because they're glowing and melting everything under the hood. Make sure, if you see, maybe -2 won't do it, but when you're seeing like -10, the car just sounds a little weird when it idles. It's got some chop to it, but it doesn't sound right. If it's a Gen 5 car, log it, look at it. If it's -10, -15, grab your fire extinguisher, pop the hood, check it, because chances are the headers are glowing and that needs to be adjusted, obviously. Keep driving it like that, obviously you have more issues. So pretty much same everything else. Everything else is the same. Let's see, we're gonna go back to the high side one. So this is a pull here. So we've got the same deal up. One more thing. So we're watching manifold air temp. Remember, these two are there, but it's not using that to calculate timing. Your AFR, everything else works just like it should work. Grams per cylinder, we're here. There's a different reading, which is pressure ratio. I don't have it on here. If that's something that you'd like to know about, contact me. I'll explain pressure ratio to you. It's a little more advanced than this video is, and it's more for the C7 guys that went to a Pro Charger, because there's actually a MAP sensor, a baro sensor inside the mass air. So it wasn't pressurized before, now it is pressurized. Keep that in mind when you go to these, you know, take superchargers off and you go to turbos or you go to Pro Charger, that you need to verify your pressure ratio reading is correct and that your mass air isn't being pressurized and your baro in your mass air isn't being pressurized, because that will cause issues here as well. Other than that, verify your throttle, verify your high side fueling, which clearly this is wrong. verify your timing at idle, and then everything else, just refer back to the rest of the video. I'm trying to think, is there anything else? Anything else?
If there is anything else, just leave it in the comments, and we may or may not reply to you, depending.
That's not nice. I'll reply. I'll hit you back.
I might let him reply. It depends on what it is.
But yeah, if you guys are looking for more info on Scanner and things like that, like I said, leave it in the comments. Let us know. We don't mind making little videos on things like this to kind of teach people how this works. Go over the remote tuning process. Just in general, kind of get you familiar with it. I know a lot of people are real nervous on the remote tuning stuff at first, and then once they start going, they realize the benefits of it. Be patient, trust your tuner, make sure your data matches what he's asking or she's asking, and then, you know, everything should be good from there.
And utilize a draggy.
And use a draggy. Big gains, big gains. If you don't have a draggy, it's because you don't care about going fast. And again, not the sport for you.
Okay, we hope you enjoyed the video. You're not funny. We hope you learned something. If you didn't learn anything, try to watch the video again and figure it out. That's what I'll be doing. If you have any other questions of anything that maybe he can help you with, that's not him teaching you how to tune, because I won't allow that, then feel free to send him a message or leave it in the comments and we'll try to go over that also.
That pretty much covers it.
All right, have fun and be fast.